Welcome to the Influence Formula versus Manipulation, Part 1. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the advantages and the importance of influence, as well as share with you the typical ways that influence can devolve into manipulation. I'm going to share with you 10 manipulative archetypes to watch out for and the energy associated with each one. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to share with you the solution to make sure that you are acting with integrity as you are exerting influence. Let's go. Before we begin, let's start with a simple definition of influence. The way I look at influence, it is the art of enrolling people into something. In particular, it can be seen as the art of enrolling somebody into something that you want them to do. Now, we can use influence in sales, in management, in politics, in parenting. Pretty much every walk of life is an opportunity for us to develop our influence skills and step into greater leadership. However, there's a problem. And the problem is that there is a fine line between influence and manipulation. Whereas, in my opinion, influence is a very beneficial skill to learn, manipulation can really hurt you. It can hurt your reputation, it can hurt your brand, it can hurt your relationships. Ultimately, on the receiving side, it doesn't feel good to be manipulated. Whether consciously or subconsciously, people are usually able to tell when they're being manipulated. And I believe that it will come back to bite you in the backside. And so, in my opinion, most people don't understand the difference between influence and manipulation. And without that understanding, we can do it without even realizing that we're doing it. So I've put together basically 10 archetypes of manipulation, the 10 most common ways that people manipulate. Now, I'm sure that there are others, and I invite you to post below in the comments if you think of one or if you know of one that I didn't mention here. Now, by the way, before I get into these 10, I want to remind you that there's a part 2 of the video where I share with you the skills and strategies that you can use to develop influence. So put a pin in this, and remember that when you're done with this video to go and watch part 2. All right, let's go. So the first archetype of manipulation, I call it the coercer. The coercer persuades people to do things they don't really want to do. Essentially, they're violating someone's sovereignty by pushing them towards something that they don't really want for themselves. An example of a coercer might be, hey, take this drug if you want to be cool, or do this thing for me if you don't want me to hurt you. So that's the coercer. The coercer uses their influence, their power, in order to make someone do something that they don't really want. The second archetype is the abuser. The abuser pushes somebody to do something when it will actually hurt them, when it's definitely not in their best interests. And again, often it's the threat of force that helps the abuser further their own agenda. The third archetype I like to call the used car salesman. Not all salesmen are like this. That's why I want to specify. And certainly not all used car salesmen are like this, but it is somewhat of a stereotype. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. The used car salesman pushes you into doing something that maybe doesn't actually harm you, but definitely benefits them more than it benefits you. Obviously, like getting someone to buy the fancier, more expensive car, even if they don't really want or need it. The fourth type of manipulator is the fearmonger. The fearmonger pushes someone to do something by manufacturing fear or tapping into and amplifying fear. Maybe I should call this one the politician, but I digress. The fifth type of manipulator is the enforcer. Think about someone who has a lot of power, who has a gun or who has a baton, right? The enforcer is someone under threat of force that forces you to do something, like perhaps the IRS. The seducer is the sixth type of manipulator. Now, the seducer, it's hard to sometimes see them coming because they're so charming, but the seducer basically paints a picture of something beautiful and desirable in order to manipulate you into doing something that they want. I think sadly, a lot of people in my industry fall into this category, coaches and people who paint the picture of all the millions of dollars you could make by marketing online and creating your funnel. And I know that there are some people who do that very well, but there's also a lot of people out there that are just taking people's money. Now, before I get into the final few archetypes, I want to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and post your comments below. The pleader is the seventh archetype, and the pleader is someone who begs and cajoles to the point where you get so sick of it, you finally say, okay, fine, I'll do whatever you want. By the way, don't tell my brother this, but this is how he learned to be so persistent when he was a little kid. The 8th is the martyr. The poor me, the victim, the one that's like, can't you see how hard it is and how hard I work? Won't you do this little thing for me? I call the 9th the priest. And again, caveat, not every priest is like this, but I personally, as a recovering Catholic, associate priests with guilt. And so the priest archetype is the one that uses guilt to make you do something. And then finally, the do-gooder. The do-gooder is inviting you and persuading you to do something because it will be good for other people. Maybe not for you, but that doesn't matter. So what do all these manipulative archetypes have in common? Well, at their core, they're overriding the other person's sovereignty. And they're basically making a decision for someone else without truly giving that person the power to make the decision fully for themselves. They're basically attached to creating a specific outcome for themselves or for someone else without fully taking into account that person's sovereignty and empowerment to make their own decision. And the interesting thing is, a lot of times the outcome would be the same, and they could get that outcome if they just honored that person's sovereignty, and then they could have a more energetically aligned conversation or situation. But people try to shortcut that process and impose their own controlling agenda onto someone else. So here's the solution. I'm going to share with you something you can do to get clean and clear before you influence someone. And then in the next video, I'll share with you specific strategies and influence skills that you can use, that you can cultivate to become more influential, but only once you've done this work, once you've gotten clean. So getting clean is about first gaining permission. In my opinion, it goes a long way to tell somebody what your intention is. So, and it's also good for you to get clear with yourself what your intention is. So for example, in the old days when I first started to do sales for my coaching practice, I was very attached to the outcome of getting a yes from somebody. So I would show up on the call with the agenda of, I want to sell them something. I want them to say yes to me. That means that I was attached to the outcome and I wasn't coming into the sales conversation clean. It meant that I was manipulating people because I was putting my agenda above their own. And I might not have been doing this consciously. In fact, I'm sure I wasn't doing this consciously. I was definitely unconscious about it. But what getting clean would look like would be to release attachment to that outcome and to instead have an intention hopping on the call of, hey, I'm hopping on this call to serve this client, to figure out the highest and best opportunity for them. Maybe that's working with me, maybe it's not, and either way is fine. And that intention that I set with myself now, I also now transparently share it with my clients at the beginning of the call or my prospects. I say to them, listen, on this call, I'm going to do my best to serve you, give you some ideas, give you some answers, and at the same time, see if we're a right fit to work together. And if we are, and only if we are, I'll let you know that so that you can decide and make an empowered decision if you want to keep going and potentially work with me. Would that be okay with you? So number one, I released attachment to the outcome. I came into the call clean. And number two, I set an intention. And number three, I transparently shared that intention with the client. That goes a long way toward creating trust and getting rid of and diffusing that tendency to be manipulative. And then finally, another thing that I do internally is that I just remember to honor that person's sovereignty and to not attach my own beliefs or story about my self-worth or my program's worth based on what they do. We're two sovereign individuals. They get to say yes or no. I get to say yes or no. And that doesn't change the fact that we're both great people who are sovereign and get to make our own empowered decisions. I hope that this video was valuable for you. And if you want to keep going, you want to learn more about working with me and having a conversation, check out superstaractivator.com/go. And there you'll find some options to discover a little bit more about my programs. I look forward to connecting with you.